Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. And we made it to the end of the week.
Yeah, let's begin this morning with President Trump's tariff U-turn. He's now suspending many of those potentially devastating tariffs that he placed on imports from Canada and Mexico just a few days ago. The president signed an executive order yesterday that puts the 25% levies on a variety of goods like cars and prescription drugs on hold until April 2nd.
It comes as the president appears to be reining in the power of Elon Musk. He told his cabinet secretaries that they can be in charge of any future federal downsizing.
Elon and the group are going to be watching them, and if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
This, as we've seen mounting lawsuits and public backlash over the mass firing of federal workers and cuts to aid the Department of Government Efficiency. NBC News business and data correspondent Brian Chung is standing by with more on the latest in Trump's trade war. But first, we're going to go to NBC's Alice Barr in Washington with the latest. Hey, Alice, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah and Joe. All eyes on the economy today with a new jobs report due out next hour and more changes to President Trump's tariff plans that are keeping everyone guessing what's coming next.
If you would have seen the people yesterday, maybe...
President Trump walking back his 25% tariffs on more imports from Canada and Mexico for 1 month, just 2 days after putting the levies in place, adamant the reversal was not prompted by concerns over higher prices for U.S. consumers and stock market drops.
I'm not even looking at the market because long term, the United States will be very strong with what's happening here.
The temporary reprieve on everything from avocados to auto parts targets goods covered by the U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement negotiated in the first Trump term. But about 60% of Canadian imports and half of those from Mexico are still subject to the 25% tariffs. And all bets are off 1 month from now when President Trump wants reciprocal tariffs on virtually every U.S. trading partner to begin.
We just weren't treated right. We were ripped off.
American businesses in limbo.
30 more days to worry about it.
As of February jobs report due out today offers the first full month of employment data under the new Trump presidency. That while President Trump is now proposing a more measured approach toward federal workforce firings.
I want the cabinet members to keep good people. I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut.
The president posting praise for the Department of Government Efficiency while noting it's now up to cabinet secretaries to be very precise as to who will remain and who will go, using a scalpel instead of a hatchet.
If they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
Uncertainty from the workforce to the markets as President Trump presses ahead.
And President Trump signed a new executive order overnight to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve funded by Bitcoin seized in criminal and civil cases. That as the president is set to host a first ever White House crypto summit today. Savannah and Joe.
All right, Alice, thank you.
Let's bring in Brian Chung now to discuss the latest on this tariff roller coaster, another twist to the saga. So explain to us just what this short-term reprieve means, how it works, what's now exempt.
Yeah, well, look, if there was any confusion over how these tariffs work, I think that the exemptions that were expanded yesterday kind of add to that confusion, because if we rewind to a few days ago, it was pretty cut and dry. 25% on any sort of items that would come in from Mexico or Canada, that's just slapped onto that product. Now, when it came to the automotive exemption, it was still kind of simple, all right, 25% except for anything that is automotive coming in from those two partner countries. But now we've expanded to anything that's already covered under the USMCA, which, as you can see on that graphic ahead of you, covers about 50% of imports from Mexico and about 38% from Canada. But there are certain types of situations, I was trying to read up on it yesterday, where clothing, if you bring in a T-shirt from Mexico, it depends on what percentage of that T-shirt was actually assembled in Mexico for whether or not it qualifies for an exemption from that 25% tariff. So again, certain types of shirts might be exempt, other types of shirts might not. So I think that adds to the confusion if you're a small business, but nonetheless, you certainly see a little bit of a sigh of relief, because at least the tariffs do have the opportunity in some cases to cover more categories than we originally thought when these tariffs were put in place on Tuesday.
Obviously, we don't know exactly what's even going to happen on April 2nd because we haven't known what's going to happen all week. It's been so much back and forth.
Yeah.
But with it just being that month for these businesses that you reference, I mean, is this a reprieve? Is this kicking the can down the road? Do you feel good about this morning?
I mean, it really is kicking the can down the road. road because, I mean, 4 weeks, it flies by just like that. And I want to point out that the original 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada were supposed to take place the first week of February until there were those concessions that Mexico and Canada offered on fentanyl, kind of like procedures at the border. That was a reason why you had some people saying, you know what, I'm not actually all that excited about that announcement in early February that they were going to basically put a pause on these tariffs because we're just going to have this conversation again in a month. And here we are again saying that these tariff exemptions that were put into place yesterday, we're just going to be talking about this again on April 2nd, when, by the way, the Trump administration wants to have reciprocal tariffs slapped onto every other country around the world as well.
And we heard one business owner in that piece there say another month to just worry about it right now. Let's talk about the markets. The president says he was not paying attention to Wall Street, but all three major markets closed in the red yesterday. Bottom line, investors just don't like this uncertainty, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly it, right? I mean, if you're a small business or you're an investor on Wall Street, you just want to know what the next few months are going to look like. But you don't even know what tomorrow's tariff policy is going to look like, which is the reason why we've seen Wall Street erase all of the gains that we've seen in 2025. So we started off the year pretty strong, and the Dow Jones at one point just a few weeks ago was at something like 5% higher than where it was on January 1st. We've erased all of that. So now we're about flat for 2025. If you're an investor or anyone that's looking at your 401k, you're probably looking at it and going, oh, this has not been ideal for me.
Yeah, absolutely. For people, businesses, sectors of the economy that are not part of these exemptions, what has this felt like so far?
Yeah, well, I think one big category is oil and gas. So we have to remember that when it came to the Canada tariff specifically, what is such a major import that we bring in from our neighbors to the north is oil and gas. We bring in Canadian crude, we refine it in the U.S., and then we use that to fuel up our cars. So that isn't changed. So this exemption that was offered yesterday doesn't impact the fact that there's still 10%. It wasn't 25, it was 10% on Canadian oil and gas, which means that you have some like Gas Buddy projecting that specifically in the Northeast, because we have so much closer ties to refineries in Newfoundland in Canada, that, we could see gas prices rise like 20 to 40 cents per gallon just as soon as mid-March. That's not changing. So for everyone that's driving, you're still watching those gas prices.
And also ahead of summer when we tend to see the prices go up anyway,
and spring break as well.
There you go. Yep. Brian, all right, thank you so much.
Brian, you've been busy. We appreciate it. Well, the Trump administration's crackdown on immigration is now shifting its focus to migrant families and children.
Three sources familiar with the plan tell NBC News that U.S. immigration agents are working on two new operations. They'll arrest migrant adults and their minor children regardless of their criminal histories. Remember, the administration initially said it would focus on migrants who had committed crimes.
NBC News senior Homeland Security correspondent Julia Ainsley has been covering this, of course, for us. She joins us with more on her reporting. Hey, Julia, good morning. So what are some of the details of this new operation, and when do we think it begins?
Well, we think that it could be underway even now, Savannah, but sometimes they won't exactly tell us about these operations until we start to hear from them, either from the family members or lawyers or advocates across the country. What we're hearing is that they're going into families. These are people who have final orders of removal, but not necessarily criminal histories, meaning that the only thing that they may have done would be a civil violation of immigration law rather than actually, which is a misdemeanor, rather than any kind of violent crime, which, as you pointed out, was the first target when this administration decided to announce mass deportations. They're also getting more warrants to be able to go to children who came in unaccompanied and were released without court dates. They're trying to track down those children, get them in the court system, and make sure that they show up so that they could eventually be deported as well. And Savannah, this could all be very complicated for them because, of course, children get more protections under this system. It's harder to deport children, especially those who come in unaccompanied. And when you hold a family before they're deported, you have to hold them in family detention. And children have only been held by Health and Human Services before they're released into the country. It's unclear what they would do if they did a mass sweep of unaccompanied children, where those people would be held, where those children would be held before deportation is really a mystery because it's never been done like that in such a large scale before.
Yeah, so Julia, I mean, speaking of family detention, you've reported this week the Trump administration is working to bring back those family detention centers. They were closed under President Biden, but there are some potential challenges there, right?
Yeah, actually, Joe, some news here. As of last night, the first families are now sleeping in family detention centers. The first one to be officially opened is in Karnes, Texas. That's a family residential center that was in operation under the first Trump administration. We should point out the Obama administration was the first to use family detention. But the way it's being used now, Joe, is completely different. And that's where they could run into some of those legal challenges and logistical challenges. Previously, this was to hold families who had recently crossed the border before they were released with court dates. And by a court order, they could only be held for 20 days. Now we're talking about families who have been uprooted, people who were living in the United States, sending their children to school before they're deported to their home countries. So this is a very different population that you're dealing with, and it's unclear if they'll be able to deport them within that 20-day time frame that's mandated by the courts, and how they'll get access to legal counsel, and if they'll be able to appeal that decision before they're deported. Joe?
So, Julia, is that some of what is different, like, this time around? Because it's not the first time a policy like this has been in place. Like, even back to 2014, the Obama, the then Trump, again now Trump and Biden administrations have all tried to, deter families and unaccompanied minors from even crossing the border in the first place. So is what you're mentioning what makes this different?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, some of my colleagues and I've been talking to people who work in facilities like this. And in the past, they said, we really felt like we were providing a humanitarian service to some of these people who would just cross the border. They were coming in. Some of them were getting medical care for the first time that they had needed for a long time before they were sent out into the United States to pursue asylum claims. The population they're getting now is going to feel completely differently about the reason they're in detention. These are people, like we said, who were living their lives, who've been uprooted from the United States. Some of these children may have no memories of the countries they're about to be deported to, and families might not have any plans for how they're going to live their lives when they go back. And so it's a really different way to use detention. But those families that I'm told that were spending the night in Karnes, Texas last night, they are not recent border crossers, Savannah, which means they too have been arrested from the interior of the United States.
All right, Julia, thank you very much. Let's get a look at what to expect this weekend from your Morning News Now weather.
Meteorologist Angie Lastman joins us with the forecast. Angie, good morning.
Hello, guys. Happy Friday. We've got some winter alerts out west, but most of that snow and rain that we're tracking from this system is on the move, and it is bringing a soggy forecast to folks across parts of the Midwest and the Great Lakes, and eventually the Northeast through the day today. It's going to be a quick mover. It's not going to be all that impactful, but of course, a little rain, a little snow for today as we round out our work week. There's that narrow band of snow that kind of slides across the Great Lakes into Pennsylvania. This is a pause at 8 o'clock tonight. Not a whole lot of accumulation from this, but again, still could be impactful. One other thing we're dealing with this morning is wind alerts. We've got a whole lot of them still up from basically New York, Boston included in there, Portland. 53 million people from this region are included in these, with winds again expected to gust 20, 30, even close to 50 miles per hour as we get through the evening hours today. So still going to be a gusty kind of day across this region. Places like New York could see gusts 45 miles per hour. Meanwhile, speaking of windy weather, we've got a couple of things going on. We've got a system that's going to kind of emerge across parts of the plains and work its way east. On the backside of that system, though, we've got windy conditions, we've got low humidity, and that means that the fire risk is once again there today. So parts of New Mexico and Texas, and this lasts into tomorrow, although it shifts a little farther south into portions of Texas, just a sliver of New Mexico included in this. But this is a look at Saturday. Again, all those same kind of ingredients will be there for fires to start and spread quickly across this region. Now, here's the system that I was mentioning. As we get into tomorrow, these showers are going to start to develop across parts of the Gulf Coast. We've got some of that rain and a bit of snow across parts of the plains, and this is going to leave us a little unsettled. Most of it will be just kind of marginal strong storms, but not looking at like a big severe weather outbreak, but some gusty showers in there and potentially some heavy rainfall that, of course, could lead to some localized flooding across this region, basically from Florida to Texas, again, parts of the plains. By Sunday, most of that is focused across the southeast in parts of northern Florida, Tampa, Jacksonville, Charleston, all included in that. But a couple of spots across Georgia to Mississippi that could see some additional rain as well. The good news is a lot of folks across this region need the rain, so it will be beneficial, but it could interrupt some of those outdoor plans for your weekend. Big picture look of your temperatures. I mean, we've got a mixed bag. It's the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, and below normal temperatures today across parts of the Rockies and points west. We've still got that warmth in place across the south. 82 degrees in Dallas today. That's 16 degrees above where we should be for this time of year. Tomorrow, a different story. Notice 55 degrees for your Saturday in Dallas. Different, though, across parts of the southeast. We'll hang on to those warmer than normal temperatures at least through Saturday before our temperatures once again take a tumble. Now, one thing to note, if you're looking for the warmer temperatures or the spring-like conditions across the Midwest or maybe the Great Lakes or the Northeast, it arrives just in time for next week. We actually do spring forward this weekend. Don't forget, 2 a.m. on Sunday, and it's going to feel like spring in a lot of places as we roll into Monday specifically. Wichita into the mid-70s. We've got St. Louis into the mid-70s by Tuesday. 60s for Chicago, 62 degrees on Tuesday in New York City and low 70s basically from Roanoke to Wilmington on by the time we get to Tuesday. So not a bad forecast, guys. I don't think there's a whole lot to complain about. We've got that fire risk here for Saturday, heavy rain across the south, but otherwise plenty of sunshine to enjoy some outdoor activities. Might want to have the extra layers if you're in the Northeast for Saturday. Otherwise, really mild conditions for the middle of the country, and we keep it fairly sunny and pleasant for most of us on Sunday as we round out our weekend. It's just those showers and thunderstorms that'll kind of set up shop across parts of the South, both Saturday and Sunday, as we head into our next work week.
I'm excited for next week. Get the windbreaker,
70s?
the light jacket out.
Me too.
Or even,
I mean,
yeah.
I'm putting my parka away.
They are.
I don't care what
You're saying, Angie
Do you
says,
think it's time?
parka goes away.
I don't care if it's time. I'm done with that coat.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.